Well, here we go on our next stop in our journey through macroeconomics. This stop is called low unemployment, and this video is just designed to give you an overarching idea of what we're going to study in this unit, okay? Make sure as you go through this unit and forever in your economic studies that you always use the term unemployment as opposed to employment, okay? That's important because you always want to have an unemployment rate. You want to talk about increasing unemployment, decreasing unemployment. And while at first it might seem backward and might seem easier just to say employment, I'm telling you, you don't want to get into the habit of switching those words around. Just always say unemployment, and then that way when you say increasing unemployment, right? That is very different than saying the opposite with employment. All right, so an overview of what we are going to study. Okay, first of all, big ideas for unemployment. Of course, low unemployment is a major macroeconomic goal of every single government, right? And this is the thing, unemployment rates are very publicized. So imagine if you're a politician, like this is gonna be in the news. People are gonna know. Unemployment touches every family's life in the entire country. And even though you might not feel threatened that you're going to lose your job, the fact that the unemployment rate is going up, which means more people are losing their jobs, it just makes you nervous. It makes you not trustworthy. It makes you maybe think that the government's not doing all that it can to secure the economic well-being of its citizens. So unemployment and unemployment rates are really important to people and very important to politicians, and therefore they're in the news all the time, okay? So, therefore, I just said this, elected officials care a lot about this information, and you will see it in the news very often, okay? The coolest part of this unit is that it matters a lot to everyone in society. I know from my own experience through life that the employment or lack of employment of my parents greatly affected my life. And of course, as I've gone through adulthood, you know, finding a job is a critical piece of what you have to do as an adult, and your ability to do so, or your ability to maybe leave the job that you're at now to get another job, actually says a lot about the economy as a whole. Okay, so those are the big ideas. Now, some key terms that you need to have in your mind, and I think in the introductory video it's just really important to go through these right away. Okay, so what does unemployment mean? Unemployment is defined as people of working age who are without work, who are available for work, and actively seeking employment. All three of those characteristics must be fulfilled in order for it to qualify as unemployment. So they're without work, so they don't have a job. They're available for work, which means they want to work, right? And they're actively seeking employment. But that's not the case for everybody. Think about maybe you as a student. If you're a university student out there watching this, you know, are you without work? Yes. Are you available for work? Yes. Are you actively seeking employment? No, maybe not. So you wouldn't actually be counted in the unemployment rate. My mother, my father, they're both baby boomers in the United States. They're now retired. They're in their 70s. Are they without work? Yes. Are they available for work? Yes. Are they looking for it? No, because they did a good job of saving the money along the way, and now they have a nice pension, okay? So unemployment must meet all of those criteria, and that means that people who are not looking for work, who are not actively seeking a job. I spent a year traveling through Southeast Asia. It changed my life. I had a backpack and, you know, a little bit of money, and I went from country to country to country, 10 different countries in Southeast Asia. Was I without work? Yes. Was I available for work? Yes. Was I looking for it? No. So I was not actually, would not have been a part of the unemployment rate in the United States at the time, because that's where I'm from, okay? What about the labor force? Well, labor force and workforce, those are interchangeable words. You can use either one, okay? The labor force, otherwise known as the workforce, is essentially the economically active population. So those are the people who are working, yeah? The economically active people in the population. The unemployment rate is another key term you got to know. The unemployment rate is the number of people who are unemployed expressed as a percentage of the total workforce, right? So not the whole population. So you look for the people who are without work, who are unemployed. In other words, they're without work, available for work, but looking for work. And then you divide that by the labor force. And the reason you divide it by the labor force is that the whole population isn't actually part of the working population. You know, retirees, they're not part of the working population. Young kids, they're not a part of the working population. So usually in most industrialized countries, that workforce, that labor force, are people between the ages of, say, 16, when you can legally get a job in most places, up to about 65, which is about the the average age when people retire, okay? So that's the unemployment rate. It is a percentage of those who are unemployed divided by the total labor force, okay? So those are three really important terms. You gotta know them really, you gotta have it really set in your head of what those terms mean. So hidden employment is defined as the following. That is unemployment that is not in official statistics because of such factors of exclusion of long-time unemployed, part-time workers, and or overqualified workers. Okay, so long-term unemployed, part-time workers, overqualified workers. Now let me take a second to talk about what that means, okay? Long-term unemployed are people who have given up looking for a job, right? It might be because of some sort of life situation they might have found themselves in. Maybe they've just resigned themselves to taking some sort of public social programs that are available to them, unemployment benefits, or in the United States, they have something called food stamps, and they've just decided to subsist based on what they can manage to put together without having a job, okay? But less obviously, and actually I think as a result of that, more interestingly, part-time workers are actually maybe not actually working as much as they would like to. So they're not unemployed. They actually have a job, but there's this term called underemployed in the sense that, like, you know, they might be really, really interested in working a 40-hour work week, but they can only get a job that gives them 20 hours of work a week. So they're not unemployed, right? They're just part-time employed, but they're not fully employed. And therefore, they wouldn't be calculated in the unemployment rate, but they would, however, not really be fully employed in the way in which they would want to be employed. A good example of that is if you can imagine during a recession, you know, somebody who's a manager of a particular, a particular firm, maybe some sort of like stockbroking firm or something, and they lose their job as a result of the fact that there's a recession, right? There's a drop in the economy. And that person loses their job, but they want to find another job, but because there's a recession, there's not a whole lot of jobs available, so they take a part-time job, say in a bookstore, working as the cashier, and they're only getting paid, you know, they only get 20 hours of work a week. So they're actually employed, but they're not employed in the way in which they would want to. And that's because there aren't enough jobs available maybe for that type of qualified person, okay? So that's part-time workers. That's called hidden unemployment. It's not considered in the unemployment rate, but they're not fully employed, okay? And then the last one is something called overqualified workers. And this is something really interesting. And this actually happened to my dad. My father was a very successful salesman. He sold direct mail catalogs. And what that means, and it's kind of not so much, it's kind of an industry that's died off a lot because of Amazon and because you can purchase things on the internet. But back in the 70s and 80s and even into the 90s, the way people bought things when they didn't go to a store was they got a catalog in the mail. And the catalog would come to them and they would look through the catalog. Like, just imagine like a Gap catalog for the store The Gap. Sears catalog is the most famous catalog. But there's a whole bunch of stores that put out these catalogs. Pottery Barn, and there's a bunch, right? So just imagine someone at home who looking through this book, this magazine, and in the catalog, they're going to order something, call 1-800. Well, now all of that whole catalog thing is online, so there's no sense in them spending the money to actually print the catalog. But my dad's business and my grandfather's and my uncle's business was to, he was a salesman for finding clients who would want to print a catalog that would be sent off to millions of people around the United States. Well, when he got to be about 50 years old, he left that job willingly and moved to Arizona. And when he got to Arizona, he thought he was going to be able to get a job in the same industry. But guess what? He was too qualified. He was too good. His pay rate would have been too high for the companies to pay him. So what did they do? They didn't hire him. And so my dad, actually, being the cool person that he is, ended up going and being a courier or a driver for Federal Express or FedEx. So he became the guy driving the truck that's like delivering the packages. And he did it because he thought, well, okay, cool, it's a job. And he liked the job. It didn't pay the same, but he had been wise throughout his career in saving money. But he's way overqualified for that job. Not because he's particularly better, but because here's a guy who actually has a university degree at a super reputable school in the United States. And the qualifications that he had as a result of his career would have meant that he could have gotten a pay up here. But as a result of the fact that there were no jobs available and his pay rate was too high, he took a job as a courier, a driver of a FedEx truck, which is a super respectable job, but at a pay rate that's much less. And actually the qualifications for that job are only a high school education. So he's way overqualified educationally and experience-wise to be a courier. He's still employed, so he's not in the unemployment rate, but actually there's some sort of hidden unemployment in the sense that the economy as a whole is not taking advantages of the entire skill set that my father had at 50 years old, and that happened for economic reasons, okay? So hidden unemployment is a very important idea to have in your mind because it's actually something really good for analyses and evaluations that you have to write, especially if you're in the IB program, because you can really use that information to chip away at the certainty of an unemployment rate. All right, so there's the introduction video, my friends. We're rolling through this unit. It's super cool. It becomes very relevant very quick, and we'll see you in the next video.